How's it going, you mob? Welcome to this episode of the Aussie English Podcast. Today I have a really special interview episode for you guys, as I have the very first Indigenous Australian on the podcast. So Lydia White Elk, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. She has an absolutely fascinating story, guys, with regards to her heritage here in Australia, as well as where she's ended up today. She's actually over in Canada, but I'm going to leave that for the interview. You guys are going to find out. So without any further ado, Lydia White Elk, thank you so much again. Let's get it started. G'day guys, welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today I have special guest Lydia here, who is a fellow Australian, but she grew up, 4,000 kilometres away from me on the other side of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So how did we meet, Lydia? You messaged me on one of the videos and we were chatting on there, right?
Yeah, I was watching the Cultivated Broad and what's the other one?
General.
In General accent video.
Yeah. And I think you noticed that at the end I mentioned the other Australian accents, right?
Yeah, you had Bogan, Indigenous, and something else. Oh, Wog. Which is,
that's in quotation
I hate saying it, but because it's like,
I got told off last time, so that was the second video that I'd made about Australian accents, and in the last one I had so many comments originally that were like, what about the Wog accent? Talk about the Wog accent. My dad speaks with the Wog accent, and I was like, all right, far out, I'll mention it.
Yeah. So, well, I always watch, have you ever seen Wog versus Aussie?
I think that guy, I think he was the one I used in the video, right? Where it was him talking with his friend.
Yeah.
That's
hilarious.
Pretty classic. I know, and we grew up watching movies like Wog Boy and he was in a lot of them, right? That actor Nick Giannopoulos, is it? The Greek guy?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So, I wanted to get you on because obviously you're Indigenous. For the people who are listening to this, it's not obvious. But for the people watching the video, and you grew up in Western Australia, which is incredibly different from the east side of Australia, right?
Yeah. I've never lived in the east side, but I know from what I've heard, it's different. So my brother lives in Melbourne now. Yeah.
What was it like then, growing up in WA? Can you share with us what that was like?
Okay, sorry to cut you off, but no, I think it's more like in America or whatever, like they call it like red states, blue states or whatever. And I think that Western Australia is more like a red state, meaning it's like, I feel like it's the country a bit.
It's a lot more conservative.
Yeah. And, but there is pockets where it's not. It's really liberal, like, for example, Fremantle, Perth, Western Australia is a little pocket of diversity. And I'm pretty sure they were the first government council to raise the Aboriginal flag. And they were also the first to vote against celebrating Australia Day. So they didn't do fireworks or anything.
Yeah.
And so, but they were basically pressured, I think, from the federal government to kind of just do not do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But they still kind of did it because instead of the 26th, I'm pretty sure they did the 27th, and it was called We Day, I'm pretty sure, or something like that.
I'll have to pick your brains on that later on, because I had an episode where I chatted to my dad about that, and it felt like it would be great to talk to someone who's obviously Indigenous to hear their opinion of it. But before we get into that, whereabouts did you grow up in Western Australia?
So there's Kalamunda, which is the hills of Perth City. So it's maybe a half an hour to an hour and 45 minutes, a drive to the actual city centre type thing. So Kalamunda is kind of in the hills, and it's a very tight community, small. It's a lot of white people. So yeah, there's maybe one or two Aboriginal families and stuff. But Kalamunda in the traditional language actually means home among the trees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it is. There's trees everywhere, and it's really beautiful there. Yeah.
But your parents, you were telling me, I think, were from 2,000-3,000 kilometres to the north, right? Out of the Kimberleys?
Yeah. So my mum is actually white Australian. So her people, I guess, came on, I think it was like the second fleet.
Really? No kidding.
Or the second or the first. Like, they were really, really early.
So they were convicts.
Actually, these guys were, their last name is Spencer.
Yeah.
And the Spencers are basically, they're actually related to Princess Diana.
Yeah.
But the Spencers are more of, I think they were more well-to-do kind of family. So they came over here to start agricultural streams and things like that. And so my mum's family is kind of well-known settler family in Perth. So they came here on the first or second fleet. So my mum's like 6th generation Australian.
Wow.
But she actually went as a teacher, and she went an English teacher, and she went up north to Halls Creek to teach English to the Aboriginal people, and that's where she met my dad, who's actually from Halls Creek, who's Gidja and Jaru.
Yep.
My auntie was telling me. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I mentioned, I think I asked you, I was like, oh, what Indigenous languages did your parents speak? And you were saying that that must have been then your dad's parents had come from 2 different groups originally.
Exactly, and it was a huge thing. Like, it wasn't supposed to happen, because if you know anything about blood groupings and things like that, you have specific blood groups which allow you to be with specific people so that there's no incest and things like that.
Kidding. So, yeah. I mean, this is the kind of thing I've heard little bits about, but never actually had a proper conversation about it. So what is that like? Mm-hmm. And how does it work?
Well, if you obviously disobey, you get punished. So it's like law, like Lore. It's not LOW.
It's like folklore.
Well, law is actually a systematic set of cultural rights, RITES. So, there's a lot of cultural rites of passage and things like that we call law. And we lived our life around that. And my grandfather was the keeper of the law. So we had elders who kept the law and things like that. So, with the blood groups, they just knew a whole bunch of stuff, because, as you know, it's not a written tradition, it's an oral tradition.
Exactly.
So it's basically all in your head, and like, if you have the knowledge, you are the godfather you're the respectable guy who knows the stuff. So, my grandfather was a lawman, and he knew a lot about that, and he actually helped the missionaries understand us when they came up. But apart from that, so I have 2 different tribes, because somewhere someone went beyond the rules.
Wow. Okay. So it was like forbidden love. Did the lawman knew, okay, if they're from the Jura tribe and the other tribe, they're not allowed to get married. They have to find someone from somewhere else. Those 2 are too closely related, are they?
I'm not sure if it's like related. I think it's more to do with like ties. So if you've got certain ties that you can't kind of cross.
Really?
I suppose. I honestly don't know enough about it, and that would be really good to interview even people that live there. But there is a cultural barrier between you and, say, someone who lives in Halls Creek, because English is a second language. So, I hate to be the speaker for them, because I don't know enough, but I can tell you what I can, because I speak English, because my mum taught me how to speak English. She's an English teacher, and my dad wanted us to speak English because he knew that was going to be good in Australia and stuff like that. So he didn't pass on the language. But
that's such a shame. I would be like, damn it, like I would give anything for one of my parents at least to have spoken another language and brought me up bilingual. I would have been like, Dad, why?
But a lot of them do speak, if not a pidgin English, they know a lot of their words up north. So, it'd be interesting to pick their brain as well. Because I've met guys from Arnhem Land, and he speaks 8 different dialects.
That's insane.
And he's like met the Queen and stuff, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
So what was that like then for you, having obviously a mother who is white and a father who is an Indigenous Australian, and not just a mother who is white, but a mother whose family had come from one of the first groups of English colonizing, settler groups? What was that like growing up with that sort of your foot on both sides of the fence with regards to, so you probably are like more Australian than me by miles because of that fact, right? Because you've got both sides.
Yeah. The whole generation. Yeah. I think, I don't know, like it's hard to kind of say it without being bitter and stuff, but
yeah,
it's a bit hard, but they have the whole half caste system and, the assimilation regime and breed the black out, I guess. So, with that, it's kind of tricky because it's more of a mindset over like blood quantum. So, what do I mean when I say that? Well, you've got like quarter caste, half caste, full blood,
I think in fact I did an episode talking about the rabbit proof fence, and I had never heard those terms before reading up on, the stolen generation and the rabbit proof fence like story and what it was based on, and that the fact that they discriminated against full blood, half blood, quarter blood, eighth blood, even 16th blood. Like they had terms for each sort of division of, what your last relative to be an Indigenous Australian. And it blew my mind. I just had no idea that it was that systematic and
yeah, we were very complex. Oh, well, even before that regime, I don't know. I feel like we're seen as being half and everything. I feel like I see both sides. Like I feel like I see, the regimes that they introduced, but I also see us as a people before that. And I see that it was systematic too, like in our own tribal ways. So we just we didn't go colonize people. So, I mean, we could have, I don't know, like there's not enough we didn't have enough time to kind of develop things, and who knows, we didn't need these things. Like we only had what we needed type thing.
Well, that's the thing that always, I would love to have, I can't imagine being the first guys to get here. I mean, and you would imagine that as much as we paint a lot of the English colonizers as being, bad guys who wanted to exterminate everyone, there must have been that curiosity too, and getting to meet, groups of the original Indigenous people living that way must have been, the meeting of two different worlds. Is that ever really discussed or thought about, or is it mainly that the colonists are kind of seen in a very negative light nowadays?
I think when I went to theology school, there was a discussion up for debate about that, about is it good for that kind of thing to happen in more of a religious sense. So they were talking about like the missionaries versus the Aboriginals, like traditional religion and things like that. I think what the original people and then the colonizers brought that they had in common, the colonizers we did also have a systematic way, but it was different. But
how did it differ? What was it like? How was it set up? For us, like we have elders and we have like a group of elders, and we have to me it's an oligarchy coming from the English side. It's more of that kind of regime. So I feel like the differences could be discussed quite a lot, but the similarities are definitely, the early settlers a lot of them were religious, so they were coming from the Anglican church and stuff like that. So I think that the similarity between the two people is they both had like an agree that there is a higher power. Yep.
So that would be probably the similarity.
And it's just the stuff that blows my mind about the little that I know about Indigenous culture too, is that you guys have this, I don't know about every single culture having the same way, but you have dream time, right, where you have all these beautiful stories and explanations that would be the equivalent of, I guess, Genesis in the Bible. And
exactly. Yeah.
They're passed on through songs and storytelling, right? Because you couldn't write it down. There was no written language here, and it was all transmitted through the elders, right? Who learnt these songs from a very young age and then could repeat them. And that had been passed down for potentially 60,000 years as a song, you know, unbroken chain from one parent to a child to a parent to a that blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be the biggest similarity, I'd say, is they agree on a higher power, a God-like supreme being. I think a respect for the natures of the earth. So I think that would be the strongest similarity between the settlers and the Aboriginal people, is probably that. So yeah, that's the biggest similarity in my mind.
Oh wow! So what's it like being someone who's 50%, you know, white and 50% Indigenous? Do you get treated differently by both sides, you know, of the fence, or do you get you know, special treatment on both sides? Like, what was it like growing up as someone who was Indigenous, but also, I guess, did you consider yourself white at all?
Well, when I went to school, I obviously looked different from everybody, and that was like a huge thing. Like, I remember people making comments about like how my features were different, for example, like my nose or like my lips or whatever it is, like my skin color and stuff like that. So it's not a huge difference in comparison to, say, like a full blood, but it's still enough of a difference for like white people to notice. So growing up in a white community, it's like, it is a noticeable thing. But then obviously on the other side of things, you know, there's darker skinned people that struggle like somewhat worse in some instances. You know, I've heard a lot about the struggle in America as well, like with colorism and like dark skinned people and stuff like that. So, I mean, I agree to a certain extent, but I also think that dark skinned people have that common bond already though. But I mean, and then I don't as well, so I'm out of that as well. So I'm not really fully dark skinned and I'm not really fully white. So yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot, the time that we're in the middle, and like, you know, South African people have made their own genre or whatever, like the, you know, brown or whatever. So, I mean, I don't know, like, I do have a duality in what I'm thinking and stuff, and a lot of the time, like, I don't understand if you're like fully one thing. So yeah, I mean, my husband is Native American. He's 100% Native American.
Wow.
You know, that's how we grew up and stuff. But obviously there's not any 100%, you know, but still that's how he's got more blood quantum than, say, I do. So, yeah.
But how do you view it? Do you view it as something incredibly positive because you have a connection to two different cultures that are completely different? Or do you view it as like, I wish I was just one or the other so that I would be, you know, less sort of, you know, shared with regards to my heritage?
Yeah, I do sometimes feel like I wish I was one, but I've had to kind of see and embrace both sides. One lady told me one time that you're both. You have rights to both sides, you know, and I was thinking, yeah, like that's how I feel. I feel like I have rights to both sides, you know, and whereas I have a duality here. So oftentimes I might speak with my husband who's like a full blood First Nations, and sometimes we get into a little fight because we see it differently. But the actuality of where that whole systematic mindset comes from about like blood quantum and stuff like that, it's actually a negative regime obviously put in by, you know, the colonizers or settlers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They've actually kind of put it into our minds that there's a problem with the lesson of the blood quantum.
So, but that's all like superficial, right? What was it like prior to do you know much about prior to the colonists arriving? Was there still, say, you know, intergroup racism between tribes?
I think so. Yeah, there would be tribalism for sure. There's tribalism here as well in Canada.
Yeah.
And of course there is that tribalism there, so there would be inter-conflict as well. So, I mean, I've heard, like how example, like my family members went beyond the rules, I guess.
Yeah,
and they would have been probably handled in a certain way as well. So, yeah, there's definitely that tribalism there. And then on the white side, there is that systematic whatever.
So what do you think with regards to the state of things in Australia today? What do you think the biggest issues are? And, you know, talking to a white male, what are the biggest things I don't understand about what it is like to be an Indigenous Australian?
I think maybe it's just the whole different mindset. You kind of have to put on a whole different mindset. What I learned with my studies and everything is putting on different glasses and ways to view the world views. It's very important to put on that set of glasses for different world views. So I think sometimes Indigenous Australian people are kind of, maybe not consciously, but kind of bullied into submission of ideology. You know, you're Australian, you know, blah, 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 but a lot of them don't feel that way.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to try and understand from their point of view. And I don't want to, like I mentioned the word tribalism, and I really think that's a very negative word because it kind of makes us look less developed and stuff. But I just want to make it clear that, like, Indigenous Australian people had their set of laws and had their system. They had their language, they had their systems, they had their ways, and it wasn't necessarily like less developed than Europeans. We just had a different context into which we developed. So because we didn't have neighbouring people like in Europe, we didn't have to develop guns or whatever. We just developed things that we had because it was the context of Australia. So they were there for thousands of years before, and they developed their own things. And just because it doesn't look European doesn't mean that it's any less than European. So I've had conversations with people saying that they're usually uneducated people. They're saying that Aboriginal people are less developed, they're less evolved, you know, and I put on a set of glasses for like the evolution. I'm like, okay, I'm going to look through this eye for a second. And a lot of those people, if they're educated or not educated, the non-educated, like evolution believers, will say things like, oh, you're less developed, you're more closer than a monkey and I'm pretty sure like Charles Darwin wrote that. Like,
that's not true. That's, I mean, it's one of those things like, I think we are both equally as closely related to monkeys as each other. Like, you guys are as much humans as us, as, you know, any other group of humans in the world. But I think it's one of those things where it's like the cultures are just totally different. And yeah, you know, the society had totally obviously organized itself completely differently. You didn't have things like 2-story houses and the wheel invented because that had happened in a few different places, and hadn't, you know, Australia's completely isolated, right?
Yeah. I mean, boomerang's got to count for something. Aerodynamics of that, you know.
That was crazy, right? That was never, you know, created anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I have a joke with my husband about, if you're going to create a boomerang, you should give some of the shares to the Aboriginal people or something, because America's all about that kind of stuff, you know, like just capitalizing on whatever it is. But
can you tell us about what was it like in Australia? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening will know very little about Indigenous culture in Australia and probably think, okay, there's Aboriginals in Australia. They're all one group. They speak one language. They have one culture. Is that true?
No, it's very varied.
Exactly.
And I think we are also similar with the flag, because we have our flag, right? Like, something like that doesn't exist, say, in Canada. Like, all the different nations, they call themselves, they actually they have separate flags, you know? So in Australia, we have one flag, but we are different. We are diverse, just like the Canadian First Nations people as well. So we are very diverse. The only thing is, because of what's happened now, is we've kind of come together and we've got our one flag. So you will find, and urban culture plays a huge factor in how we conduct ourselves now.
So you don't only have the historic, you know, separation of, I think it's something like 265 countries, right, across the entirety of Australia. It's divided up into so many different nations. But you also have modern day groupings, do you, where, say, Indigenous people that grow up in the Kimberleys or in Perth or in Melbourne are totally different culturally?
Because I'm okay, I can't speak as much as I like to on my own people from my own area. I actually know more Noongar words because I grew up in Noongar country, you know, so I'm, you know, it's kind of like integrating into another country. I've kind of grew up in Perth around Noongar people. Therefore, I know Noongar slang, for example, like Bujari, or like, I on our, there's like a lot of different words on the street, the Noongars use, and we all kind of learn it. So that's why I can't really speak as much as I'd like to on my own people, because I've actually integrated into the Noongar people.
So that would be like, the equivalent of that might be me growing up in England and then as a kid being moved, or in fact my parents coming from England, say, and then moving me to France or Germany and me growing up there, right? Yeah. Even though we look the same or we have the same complexion, the languages are totally different.
Exactly, yes. Yep, that's exactly where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So did they accept you too, like one of them? Because I can imagine that if I was a kid in England going to France, I would probably be treated like a total outsider, at least initially, until I had grown up and learnt French or learnt the culture a bit. Was that the case for you, or was it much more of you're one of us because you're Indigenous and you're Australian?
Well, yeah, I mean, my experience has been very different from your average. Well, I'm not even sure, but it's quite a complex difference, I think. Whereas, if you're just from somewhere, you've been raised there, that's it. But mine and my brothers and sisters has been quite a bit different in that sense. And how did we feel? I mean, there's always the difference of like darker skin. So in my eyes, like I was the darker one, which is so silly because where I come from, I'm the lighter one. So growing up in Perth, I am like the darker one. I have the more stronger features. But the Noongar people I just went to Aboriginal Education Conference in Toronto, and there was a Noongar elder, and he was talking about how the Noongar tribe is actually the largest tribe statistically in Australia right now.
Wow, okay.
And they're just growing and thriving and everything like that. And they're, so I mean, from that point of view, I'm proud to kind of be with them. I got to say that they are different than us, because when I go up north, there's a different way about us, and there's a different way about how they conduct themselves.
So what are the main sort of cultural differences, if you were to say? Because again, Australians would probably think if you're Indigenous, you are a single unit, but do you guys have like totally different cultures based around completely different animals, plants, land, features and everything like that as well? That it's oranges and apples.
I think it's quite different, to be honest with you, because I've obviously grown up in Noongar country. I've been exposed to Noongar education a lot more than Gidja Jaru. So, just from what the little that I've gathered from the Kimberleys, there is quite a big difference, because, for example, the environment is different. Mm-hmm. So whereas up north you've got wet and dry season, in Noongar country you have, I think it's like 4 or 6 different seasons. So just on that alone it's very different. And the dances are different because their environment is different.
Oh, wow.
So like inland Aboriginals have different dances than, say, the ones that are near the sea, because we gather our intelligent information from what's around us. So just where you're around, what you're around is different. So when you go up north, it's like a different country, because you've got boab trees, you've got red dirt, it's like desert. And then down there, it's like you got the beach, you got the trees. So that alone is different enough. So
does that translate into, say, the oral history that's passed down? Is that completely different? The stories that they tell as well, and is their dream time different as well?
I haven't learnt from the Kimberley dream time, so I'm not 100%. But in Noongar country, it's the serpent. I think the serpent is something that's Noongar. I don't know about where you're from.
Is that the rainbow serpent, right?
Well, if you've learnt that from over there, I think that they might have just kind of made a conglomerate kind of
The people
thing.
here are the Kuri tribe locally, I believe, and the Wathaurong as well.
Mm.
But I'd heard about the rainbow serpent at school. We used to do we were learning about that and would do art about it. Do you want to explain what exactly that is and how it fits into Dreamtime for those who don't know?
Okay, so the way I was taught in Noongar country is basically it's a serpent that created the gorges And as the serpent was kind of slithering, it created the mountains and the valleys and things like that. And then they have the woman who's got the long hair, and she flicked her hair and then all the stars came about, for example. So, yeah, I mean, I guess people want to see it as allegorical. But it's kind of like Genesis, you know. It's
exactly,
like,
yeah. It's how the world came into being, right? And how humans were created and...
Yeah. So obviously with the whole Christianized movement, it's also limited the access to information like that as well, because, I don't know, I feel like maybe the culture was demonized or something like that. So, yeah, so...
Well, it's two religions, right? As soon as that happens and two come in contact, one of them normally wants to take over completely, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to comment on that because the details aren't there really right now for me, but I have learnt from Noongar elders, and they know a hell of a lot more than I'll ever know. And that's actually something that we have in our culture, is there are the ones with more information. And actually he was telling me and my husband that you only kind of earn the right to information through your humble spirit and things like that. So you can't just learn information because you want to. You have to kind of go down a journey of self-discovery and have a humility about you before you learn from people.
And people have to decide to obviously teach you, right? There's no, back in the day, you would imagine there's no internet, you can't just go out and learn these things for yourself, and it's learning them or not learning them is the difference between life and death, right? Or the survival of a tribe. If someone decides, I'm not going to share any of the information passed down to me to my tribe, that's it, right? You wouldn't know what to eat, where to hunt, how to survive.
Exactly. So it's been used sometimes in a power trip I've seen here in Canada a little bit that people don't want to, the elders don't want to share their language and stuff, and they criticize the young people for not sharing it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for not doing it properly. They'll be like, oh, you don't say it like that, for example. But, it's basically called lateral violence, and it's basically violence that they've experienced. They now kind of lash out on their own people. I guess.
They take it out on other people.
Yeah.
So how is that changing in modern day times with regards to the passing down of knowledge through Indigenous tribes, whether they're Australian or Canadian? Is it done the same way, or is modern day technology taking a part in that as well and preserving that information?
Well, for example, Blackfoot, the Siksika Nation, the Prairie, the Lords of the Prairies, I think that's what they call themselves. Yeah, because they were creating the railroad here in Canada and America, and they were mixing with the likes of black slaves and Chinese slaves, Chinese people that came over. Basically, the Blackfoot people here, they have decided to take language into technology. And at the Aboriginal Education Conference, a lot of the different Aboriginal groups were talking about how they're taking the education and combining it with technology so it lasts.
Yep.
So like apps, like language apps for like the Blackfoot language, which is Nitsi Puksin, and that is on an app now. So something like that, anyone could just get it for $10 and just learn it on their own time.
Do you think that's incredibly important, especially too for Australian Indigenous languages? Because I think I read some of them have the average Indigenous language in Australia there's like 300 of them, right? The average one has between like 10 and 100 speakers these days. And there's only a few that have, thousands or tens of thousands, if that at all. Do you think that modern technology is going to be able to save a lot of these languages, for future generations?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I feel like education is seen differently, in the different cultures, like Aboriginal culture, for example, obviously you can do things like that, and I think that there'll be someone who does it. But I also think that there's an approach to education in a different way. I know from where I'm coming from is, I guess, integrating is like become a huge thing.
As in, so it's become difficult, or it's been something that people are pushing for?
Yeah, it's been pushed a whole lot that, you know, I don't know if things are probably going to die off unless someone makes a conscious effort to go back and like some of the missionaries like wrote books about our languages and stuff. So yeah, if someone wants to do that, like make a conscious effort to do that, and help the people out, I think that it could survive, but I don't know if there's enough people who are interested in. It needs to be a collaborative effort, I think.
Because that's the biggest issue, right? You'll have, say, Tribe X in northern Queensland where everyone speaks the language, and then they have children who all get exposed to the English education system and English in Australia. They learn English and they reject their native language or don't use it enough, and then it gets lost, right? If they aren't pushed to at least try and maintain that. Exactly,
because, for example, in Quebec, they've been able to keep Quebecois because they've made a conscious effort to, and the government around here is like allowed to enforce it, and not that that's negative, but that's what they've done here. And they've even got on their what do you call it, the driver's plates, they've got
the signs everywhere, right?
Yeah, but they have this one thing, je me souviens, something like that, but it means like I will remember. So that's the kind of the
je vais souvenir.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've got that written on their on the back of their cars, on their plates.
Yeah.
So they've made a conscious effort to remember, whereas in Australia it's hard to remember. So it needs, like I said, it needs to be in collaboration with not just us, with a lot of other people.
And it's so difficult, I take it too, because, for instance, there's, a tribal group here that live where my parents are, and if I drive for 30, 40 minutes, I'm in a completely different area with a different tribe that speak a different language. It's not like it's a single language that can be conserved if the entire country of Australia says, okay, next week you've got to go to every single one of these 300 different tribes and say, do that effectively, that process that Quebec's done, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the guy I met from Arnhem Land who knows 8 dialects, I guess he's got so much knowledge, and it's up to him really, and guys like that who kind of know that stuff to kind of get it down, and for people to help him to do that.
Yeah.
Because he can't possibly sit there and write all that. He probably needs like a team around him.
Yeah.
Things like that. So just maybe something like that would be good, as if we could find these people that know the languages and work with them as a team or something like that, instead of spending thousands of dollars on whatever they do. It could possibly be implemented like specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like you say, there's a lot of different languages, but there are people out there that are Indigenous that know all those different dialects. There's no reason why they can't record that stuff that they know.
Yeah. It's just that effort and funding needs to be put into that.
Yeah, just more specifically with stuff like that, instead of, I don't know what they're spending, but yeah, so just not carelessly dealing with it. I feel like someone needs to really care about it if they're going to do it, I guess.
And I guess too, it is just a lot of work, right? It's not just, okay, we'll do this for one group. It's like, if you want to do it for all of them, that is, you literally are going to have to go all over Australia. It's probably going to take decades, but it has to be done.
Exactly. And I'm pretty sure there's people in college right now, linguistics and stuff like that, they're actually writing stuff about this. Like I read a PhD student, he'd written something about the Gidja language, I'm pretty sure. So there are people out there making that effort, and that's really great. And they're not necessarily Aboriginal, they're white Australians.
Yeah.
And that's something that I believe too, is like, if you care enough about the culture, you can be integrated into our culture. And
that's one of the things I kind of resent a little bit about Australian culture is the lack of access that I, as an Australian, have to Indigenous culture. Because it's funny, like, as someone who's British, I've never been there. My parents were born here. Like, I don't, I'm British, but I'm Australian. At least I consider myself Australian, but I feel like you guys are the real, authentic Australians that I would love to learn a lot more about this country and its history from. But it's like there is this big barrier between us where it's just not available, or it feels like you can't ask. You kind of, as a white male, you kind of feel like it's not your business. You got to stay out of it, and, you don't have the right to do that.
Well, what you're feeling is something that a lot of people feel, even if you're Aboriginal.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily feel that we have the right either, because, like I said, it's the ones that have the information. They may be willing to share it with us more than you.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true, because I've met women I've met one artist, Helen. She's gone out there into, can't remember which specific tribe, but she's gone out there in the bush and she's literally integrated, and that she's been initiated as part of the tribe, and she's a white woman. So
yeah.
she's done more than I have ever done. So it's definitely possible. And I don't, yeah, there is colorism. I think what you're talking about is colorism. If you've got lighter skin, then you can't do anything.
I think, though, for me, it's almost from other people who are Caucasian Australians would almost, there is this kind of impression of like, you don't even try. Like, you're not one of them. You can't do that, and it feels like there's no encouragement or message from the other side either to say, do it, get over here, come and integrate and learn about it. But maybe I just haven't been looking hard enough. Well,
yeah, I think you could go delve into it. You could go sit with them and say, look, I really am interested, I want to learn from you, and they'll take you through whatever rites of passage or whatever. You could literally do it the old school way like that. You could. There's nothing in your way. And show a good example to other white people. I don't think there's any problem with that. But on another note, I was just thinking that I've been thinking about this a lot, is how modern cultures have manifested, and how they are so intrinsically influenced by First Nations people without even knowing.
Really?
So, I mean, I feel that way, because I feel like it's hard not to be. Okay, so this is an example. So, urban hip hop culture in the States, you got hip hop come out of New York City. Basically, a lot of it's been the Latino people were a part of it. The black people were a part of it. Anyone who just needed to have a voice were a part of it. And they started this revolution. And it's built upon multiple cultures. And so now, how many years later it's still thriving. I don't know. I feel like it's an example of how culture develops with many voices and influences,
So you think we need to push more to sort of try and integrate those two cultures and not necessarily feel like we're separate, and create our own, fused version of that here in Australia? Do you think a lot more needs to be done to blend the two?
Yeah, totally. Like, I worked at Evergreen Garden Market for the Brickworks in Toronto, and they're talking about city planning, and they're just talking about city planning from a different perspective. So let's just say the colonizers have this way, or the settlers have this way, and then the Aboriginal people have this way. Integration and mash-up of the both would be really good. So more nature within the city, or, finding city planning ways to integrate nature and welcoming and less concrete, or whatever it is. There is a utopia for sure. Integrating the both, I think.
The both. That's so French.
Really?
Yeah, les deux, right? The two.
Yeah.
So I guess before we finish up, Australia Day. What are your opinions on Australia Day? Finally, I get to ask someone who isn't a white male Australian, for their insight. How does it feel to be someone who's Indigenous? Is it something that's incredibly offensive? Is it something that's just a non-issue you don't even think about? What are your thoughts on Australia Day?
It's a sore spot when I was growing up because I hadn't have travelled out the country. Now I have more of a worldwide view, I feel. But when I was living in the country and you're kind of stuck there on Australia Day, it makes you feel a certain type of way because there's so many people that hate you. Like, it's like you walk into a shop and people are like, can we check your bags? Or, racial profiling, or even like people from other countries, not like, and some of your people are from other countries. I would like just tell them, like, just try and learn something before you judge, because I know like some people from other countries come and they'll be like, oh, you guys are drunk and smelly and lazy, but I'd like them to take in consideration the context and things like that. And if Aboriginal people are usually happy for a yarn if you show them a bit of interest, So I guess growing up on Australia Day, like everyone, the feeling is just, it's not a nice one sometimes. And sometimes it's like race wars and things like that. And it's just not a nice environment. It's not very inclusive, I'm sure, to like new Australians as well. But I feel like as an Aboriginal person, it feels like even worse. It feels like a slap in the face because it's basically a celebration of like mass murder.
Because that's a point that is important, because I have heard quite a few Indigenous people mention that and say, the day represents when the first settlers arrived, on the 26th. But for me, I guess it was one of those things where I always said, but I just don't even, when I celebrate Australia Day, I don't even think, like I didn't even know, for 20 years of my life that was the exact day for this reason. It wasn't something that ever entered my head. Is it that, I guess where am I going with this point? Is it that you're worried or think that the average Australian is celebrating for that reason specifically, or?
No, I think it's ignorance, and I think it just shows the lack of knowledge and the lack of history. Like, I guess they say, I don't want to say that we're victims, but there's that whole quote, victories written by the victors and stuff. And I do feel like people they don't dig enough. They kind of just judge on a very superficial level, just as like the fashion industry, whatever.
We're lazy. There's only so many minutes in the day, right? We just like, good enough, whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, if it gets forced in your face to look at it, maybe you should consider it, and that's what it's come to. And I mean, that's not necessarily negative either. I think what's happening now is pretty good. Like, Aboriginal people are, they're standing up for their beliefs, and they're standing up for what they think is justice, which I believe is justice. It's not like those people know, like most of you guys don't know, like most of you guys didn't personally kill anyone, but it's just nice to, okay, here's a good example. If your grandfather, I don't know, no, I can't really, but I know it's hard.
I guess it's like that situation in the US, right, where a lot of white people feel like they're blamed by black people for slavery when it wasn't their grandfather. It may not have even been their great-grandfather. Maybe it wasn't even anyone in their family, but because of their race, they kind of get blamed for having some kind of historical part in a crime.
Yeah. I think it's just acknowledging that this is a city, in an urban setting. If we are living in an urban setting in Australia, you are benefiting off of the settlers.
Yeah.
They set this society up for you and up for whoever else wants to come into that society. And I just think that it's just fair and respectful just to respect who was there before, even if you don't agree with whatever, just respecting that they were there before and that they're not necessarily they don't have a
still
society
here,
that's
right?
been built.
It's not even that you're gone. You're still here today.
Yeah. Still here, and we're trying to make a way for ourselves in a society that wasn't necessarily built for us, and we were just forced to assimilate. And if we're, so I think that people just need to take that into context. Yes, you are not a part of those people, but you are benefiting from the things that they've set up. Yeah. So if you're coming to Australia, or if you're, white Australian, whatever, just have that in mind. And a lot of people are grateful, but just be grateful, like that you're benefiting from what the settlers created for you guys, and just think of the Indigenous people that they are trying to make their own way too, we're trying to make our way through this maze as well. And it would just be nice not to be disrespected all the time and just basically spat on. Like, I remember one time I was walking down the street and someone said, "Oh, you're a black slut," you know, like just shit like that, you know, like it's just unnecessary to be so hateful without just trying to understand. So
it's funny too, because I take it they're the kind of people, and I've heard a lot about this in, say, the US, where you meet or you hear about these people who are massively racist, and then you find out they've never actually met anyone who's black, you know, or they've never met a Muslim, but they hate Muslims. And you're just like, do you think that a lot more needs to be done to bring those two sides of the community together to kind of get rid of those barriers and those prejudices?
Yeah, like I believe Fremantle's onto something with their celebration on the day after. Everyone there was different. They had different backgrounds, and then there was the Aboriginal people as well. And they can, like, not to be stereotypical, but like in the urban setting, like Aboriginal people can be pretty buoyant.
What is it, like full on, or?
Yeah, like loud and just like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, somewhere like Fremantle, it's really cool because you don't have gentrification as much.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to push you out or trying to build up areas and then like clean it up and then get police to come arrest and mass incarcerate black people.
Yeah.
And so Fremantle is a really nice example of how you've got a whole bunch of different people on that day just chilling, and the Aboriginal can be whoever they want to be. Those people can be whoever they want to be, and you're all just coexisting together nicely instead of just trying to like clean up the streets, I guess.
Well, and there's plenty of you know, non-Indigenous Australians who are filthying the streets as well, right? By being drunk or loud or.
Unfortunately, we just get a little bit looked down upon for some reason. I'm not sure where that comes from.
I think it's always one of those things where it's that tribalism in everyone. All humans seem to have it, where it's just the outside group is the bad group. Even if they're doing exactly what we do, because they're different, we'll judge them for it.
Exactly.
But you go, sorry.
Well, yeah, to answer the question about do you think people need to come together? Yeah, I do. And I think there's councils out there coming up with really great ideas. And I just think that we should vote for people that are like more like that.
Yeah, well, that's it, who want to bring two sides together. But so what do you think with regards to Australia Day and bringing people together? Do you have any suggestions or ideas for what can be done, you know, moving into the future, whether it's big changes or even just advice for listeners who want to learn more about or be involved with the Indigenous community in Australia?
I would say, first of all, try not to get mad. Just take a step back, and you may have had some negative experiences with Indigenous people, but just maybe trying to put on a different set of glasses. And I would just say, if you want to reach out, there's always guys around. just go, "Hey, how's it going?" or something. They'll probably sit there and talk to you for a long time. You might have to say sorry.
I've got to go.
But they're always usually open for a chat, you know. So just reach out where you can, I suppose.
Yeah,
just
and Australia
smile.
Day, should Australia Day just be changed completely? What would be a way to make that a day that everyone could celebrate?
I think your intention should be made clear. Perhaps you say, "Hey, I just want to respect the First Peoples and Happy Australia Day if you choose to celebrate," you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've met some young people recently, quite radical, and they're white, and they're like, "We're against Australia Day, we're like boycotting it." And you know, you find that too, so that's fine as well. But if you want to celebrate it, just don't worry about it.
Exactly. That was always the confusing thing for me, was that at least, you know, in Melbourne there don't tend to be a lot of Indigenous people, and so the only people I would ever hear complaining about Australia Day would be as white as I am and as English, you know, blood-wise as I am, and I would always be like, it's like me complaining about sexism towards women, right? Where it's like, I want to hear the problems from the people who are apparently being affected. I don't want to hear from someone else who's, you know, taken up that problem on behalf of someone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely appreciate that, you know, like I'm not disrespect. I love the fact that I think that's awesome. But like I said, if you choose to celebrate any stuff like that, just, I don't know. It's such a complex situation.
That's it.
And yeah,
there's no easy answer,
really.
huh?
There's no easy answer. I just say, if you're, like someone told me here in Quebec, if you respect others, they'll respect you. Like,
exactly.
It's, you know what I mean? Yeah.
All right, last thing. How did you end up in Quebec? And how did you end up learning French? You know, I think you must be well, I haven't met a lot of Indigenous people learning foreign languages, but you must be the first one I've met learning French who's living in the foreign country as well. How did you end up in Quebec?
Well, my husband is First Nations Blackfoot from Sixa, Alberta, and so I met him online, and then we got married and stuff.
Oh wow!
And we bonded over being First Nations and the similarities. And I basically got married and then moved here, and we lived in Calgary, we lived in Toronto, in Kingston, and now Quebec because he's in the military. And so that's how I ended up here. Is in the military.
How's it been learning French? Has that been a steep learning curve?
It's awesome. I love it. I think it's really cool. I think it's awesome how they string things together so lovely and eloquently, like a song. I think it's really nice to learn another language. I think people that learn other languages, I definitely think it's beneficial to the mind. Has it completely
changed your sort of perception too, now learning a foreign language and obviously probably communicating with people who don't speak English? Has that did you have that mind blown moment when you had your first conversation with someone who doesn't speak your native language?
Yeah, because I don't know, my experience here has been really positive. Like, a lot of people in Canada have their whole thing with Quebecers and stuff, but my experience has been really positive. And in Anglo mindset just seems a lot different to Francophone mindset. And especially Quebecois mindset. So I feel like learning and talking with them is just like a refreshing thing. Yeah. Sometimes, if you get sick of something, maybe just go somewhere else or go into a different community or something, because
mix it up.
Yeah, that's what I've had to do.
And do you think you're going to use these skills to go home and learn either of your father's parents' languages one day?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm just trying to explore the language center of my mind and open it up and get the muscle kind of exercise and stuff.
Any tips?
I think it's definitely repetition and getting out there and having conversations with real people, even though you feel stupid. And just have a laugh about it, I guess. And keep going. Don't give up. It's hard, but
it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. When you start getting into the rhythm of it, it's hard not to forget that. It's like a muscle, that muscle is always there, whether you're practicing it or not. But when you're practicing it, that's when it's the strongest.
I think you're right. Well, Lydia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You've given us an hour, so I really, really appreciate answering all of these questions.
It's okay. I hope I did everyone justice.
Oh, you did well. I'll have to get you back on in the future when I come up with another list of interesting questions to pose you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Cheers. All right, guys, so that was the interview for today. Lydia, thank you so much once again for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. It's really important to me that you were on here, so thank you once again. I'll have to get you on in the future. Guys, I hope you got a lot out of it. I know it was a long one, almost an hour long. And with that, I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll chat to you soon. See you guys.